Hi guys, welcome back to another video on Next.js. I'm gonna be implementing complete authentication and authorization system using Auth.js version 5, which is the latest version of it. And you can see that at the top it is showing migrating from next-auth.js version 4. Actually, I've created a couple of videos already using the next-auth version. If I show you my playlist, so this is the playlist of my next 14 tutorial app directory, and you can see that it has this video, next-auth login registration with credentials and GitHub, and this is the second video on next-auth for forget and reset password implementation with MongoDB. All right, so this is the application which I'm going to be implementing. This is the nav bar and this is the landing page, which is the public page. Currently the middleware and the server routes are the protected because I'm not logged in. If I click on the login, I'll have this form, and it has proper validation applied. And if I click on login after giving a correct email and the password, then I will be able to log in. And if user which is trying to log in does not exist in the database, it will first register itself in our MongoDB database, which I'm going to be using in this video, and then it's going to be login, performing all the session management thing. Okay, and then I'm going to show you how we can add the login with GitHub and other social providers. So let me click on the login. You will see this awesome loading on that button, and you can see that it has this email ID which is currently logged in. We have a logout button now, and if I click on the middleware, I'm able to navigate to this middleware and these server routes because I'm now logged in. And if I click on the home, this was already a public route. All right, I can click on the logout, and now I can actually click on the login again. I will not be able to navigate to the middleware and the server route. And also I'll be using this Prisma ORM for data modeling. So three things which I'm going to be using, actually four: Next.js, Auth.js version 5, Prisma ORM, and MongoDB. So let's get started by creating a new Next.js project in VS Code. So I've opened up an empty folder in my VS Code. First of all, we need to verify that we have the latest stable version of Node and NPM installed in our system. So in the terminal of VS Code, I can verify that. So this is the version I have currently installed, which is fine. So I'm going to be clearing this out, and let's write this command npx create next app at latest space dot, because I don't want to create a new folder in this particular folder which I've already opened. So I'm going to hit enter. So it's going to ask me a few questions. I'm going to start off with the TypeScript. Yes. ESLint, yes. Tailwind CSS, yes. Source directory, no. App router, yes. This is a very important point. And no for import alias. So this is going to create a new Next.js project. So before moving further, make sure you subscribe my channel, and also if you need any development services, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I've given the link of my profile in the description of this video. So this is still getting created. Actually, I've created a Next.js project using app directory structure. You can follow this video using the version 13 of Next.js, using the version 14, version 15 that uses app directory structure. There are few differences between these versions, but overall the structure and the layout is same. So our Next.js project is created. Let me clear the terminal out. Let me run the project and see if everything is working fine. We have this default URL here, and this should be visible on the home route. So our project is running on localhost colon 3000. Let me refresh this page. Currently I was running my old project, so let me hit enter, and it should show me this default UI which is provided by Next.js. So I'm going to be deleting everything which is provided by this. So let me remove this, and also let me add this div landing page for now. Okay, let me save it, and it should be automatically populated on this page. Sometimes it doesn't, so I have refreshed. It is showing landing page, which is fine. Okay, so before moving further, I'm going to be installing all the packages and libraries which are required to be used in this tutorial. So more than half of this video is about configuration of Prisma, next-auth, and different files and folder structures. So I would request you guys to stay focused, because I will be following the documentation, plus I will be modifying the recommendations which are provided by this documentation of next-auth and also by the Prisma. Okay, so first of all, in the terminal, I'm going to be installing few packages. Let's first install Prisma / client. Then I need to install auth, Prisma adapter. Then I need to install MongoDB. Let's also install auth, MongoDB adapter. Okay, for now let's hit enter. I want these packages to be installed in our project. So after that I need few more packages like the bcrypt for encryption of the password, for icons using React icons, and a few more packages. So let's wait for it until it gets installed. So these packages are installed. Let's also install few more packages. First of all, we need bcrypt.js. We have already installed MongoDB, so I would need React icons as well, and also I would need add type bcrypt.js. Let's hit enter. And after that, I will be installing the Prisma as a dev dependency. So let me install npm I Prisma --save -dev. Let's hit enter. So it will be installed as a dev dependency in our package.json file. Once it is going to get installed, I'm going to show you in my package.json. For now, let me open this up. So you can see that all of these packages are installed in the dependencies. Bcrypt, type bcrypt, MongoDB, React icons, and in the dev dependencies, we have this Prisma installed. Now, one last but most important package is next-auth package, which we need to install. But for that, let's go to its documentation auth.js.dev. Let's click on get started. And here we need to select different frameworks. We are using Next.js. Let's click on that. So this is the command which we need to copy, and let's run it in the terminal of our VS Code. So this is going to be gets installed as a beta version because this v5 version is the latest version which is in the beta stage. So if I go over here, we can set up different environments. We need to create a .env file in our project, and we need to create this secret can be anything, but it is recommended to use some complex secret. So first of all, in our project we need to create a new file .env, and inside it we need to create auth_secret equals to. Okay, and in the terminal we can use any of these commands to generate the secret. So let's use this one, the first one. Let's hit enter, and this should actually give us, yes, you can see that it has given us this thing. So I can actually copy whole thing. Let's paste it over here, and since we have this equal sign, let's wrap it inside the double quotes. Okay, let's go to the documentation. Let's come down, and now we need to create this auth.ts file. So let's create a new file, and this is going to be the auth.ts. For now, let's copy everything which it is recommending. Let's copy this and let's paste it over here. I'll be modifying it, and I'll be adding a lot of lines of code in this particular file. For now, let's leave it. Now we need to create this particular folder structure within the app directory. So /API/auth/ .next-auth. So let's create that inside the app. Let's create a new folder. Let's add the whole path, and inside this particular last folder we need to create a new file route.ts, and let's paste which is recommended by this. Now, rather than actually first importing and then exporting it from here, we can directly add this particular line of code over here. Let's remove this const as well. Let's remove the first line. Let's save it. Currently it is showing some error because we have not added anything like get post within the auth.js file over here. Actually, this is the ts file. Okay, for now this is pretty much it we need to add in this particular file. So let's close it. And let's go to the documentation. What we have here, we need to create one last file, which is the middleware.ts. It has given us one line. Let's add that. I'll come back to this file and I'll be adding a lot of things inside it. So let's close it. Let's close all of these files. And one last important file is this one, auth.ts. Okay, so let me add few lines of code inside this file. So first of all, inside the providers, we need to add import GitHub from next-auth providers GitHub. Okay, so this has been added. This has to be with the capital G actually. Okay, and after that we can import Prisma adapter from auth Prisma adapter, and then we need to import credentials. Credentials are going to be from next-auth providers credentials. So this is going to be with the capital C. Don't do any kind of mistakes. And finally, we will be needing this bcrypt.js, actually bcrypt from bcrypt.js. Okay, and here inside this handler, we can have this as an object, and let's add get and then the post. Let's save it. So we have handler, get, post, sign in, sign out, auth, and inside the providers we can have a GitHub provider like this, and then we can have the credentials provider, which we have already imported. So credentials like this. Okay, and inside this GitHub we can have this client ID and the client secret like this, and these are the different variables which we need to add. I'm going to be changing the name of this in our env file, so let me change the name. So auth GitHub ID, auth GitHub secret. Okay, and here above this provider we need to add an adapter. This is going to be Prisma adapter, and then I'm simply going to pass a DB which I yet need to create. And one thing which I need to add here is this strategy, which is going to be the JWT. Okay, so now let's create this DB file, and DB file should be existing inside any folder, or we can have it directly in our root directory. So db.ts. Okay, and inside it we can actually import Prisma client from Prisma client. Since we are using Next.js, Next.js have the server-side rendered components or a client-side rendered components. Actually, the documentation of next-auth, if we go to this authentication, or let's say the database Prisma, and this is what it recommends to add in auth.ts directly Prisma, but we are using Next.js. It doesn't quite work well in Next.js when we have the server-side rendered component or client-side rendered component. So we need to create a global variable to make it work. So I first need to declare global, and then inside it we need to create var Prisma, which is going to be of type Prisma client and undefined. And after that we can have export const db global dot Prisma and the new Prisma client. By the way, the extension which I'm using, which is recommending me all the cool code by reading the context, is this one. Let me show you. This one, Super Maven. Make sure you install it. It has its paid version as well, but I'm using free version, and free version is quite good. So let's come over here and let's hit enter. So it is recommending me few things, and it is giving me the correct line of code. Okay, so let's save this file. Let's go into here and let's import this DB which I have created. Now the error is gone, And here we have this bcrypt, which I will be using within this credentials provider. And that's pretty much it we need to do for now in this particular file. So let's close this db.ts file, and first of all let's go over here in our auth.js, and let's click on authentication. Let's click on the database Prisma, and we have already installed these packages. We need to create this database URL in our env file, so let's open that up. Let's add it over here. I'll be modifying its value once I'll be creating a new database URL in my MongoDB, Mongo Atlas actually. And currently it is giving me the Postgres URL, but I'll be using MongoDB. So let's come down. I've already added this auth.ts thing, and we have this MongoDB. So it is giving us this pre-built schema models for our user authentication, for the account, for user, for session management, verification, authenticator. So for now, I'm gonna be copy pasting it from here. Well, first of all, I need to generate the Prisma. So for generating that, I'm going to come in the terminal and I'm going to write npx prisma init. Okay, so let's hit enter, and now you can see that it has this env file. If you didn't create this env file, it would have created this automatically for us and added these variables. Since we already had that, compare, let's click on that. All right, so now we have this Prisma folder automatically generated. Inside this Prisma folder, we have this schema.prisma file. Okay, and we have this generator for the client, provider Prisma client JS, and then we have the data source. Data source have the Postgres, which we can actually modify. So let's modify that. We have to change it to MongoDB. This is the database URL which is added over here. Make sure there is no spelling mistake between the key name, and we have this Prisma client JS. All right, so now here I'm going to copy models from the user all the way down until this thing. Okay, so let's add it. So you can see that we have these models already added. One thing more I would like to add is the user role. If you want to implement user role, we can have an enum user role, and then we can have an admin and then the user. Okay, and to make it relevant to the user, we can add it over here. So let's add role, user role. This is going to be an optional, and the default is going to be admin, because the two values are supported by this user role enum. So I've added this over here. So we are actually configuring the schema, and we don't need to modify that. Some of its keys, or you can say the properties, are not required for this particular video. But for down the road, you might need all of these things for implementing authenticator, 2FA, or the forget reset password. So I'm gonna keep all of these properties in my schema. All right, so let's close that. We have this database URL. Now finally what we need to do is we need to connect the real database URL over here, and after that I'm going to be generating and pushing my database schema to my MongoDB database. Okay, make sure you save all of these things, and also I'll come back to this. Let me quickly add these variables so we don't forget these later on. We need to add these GitHub ID and GitHub secret after creating a new app in our GitHub settings, profile settings. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the MongoDB, and I'm going to click on this organization, and here I'm going to be creating a new project. So let's click on the Atlas. So in this organization, I have this project already created. I'm going to be creating a new project for you guys so you can learn everything from scratch. So I'm going to be writing Auth.js v5, and let's click on next. We don't need to add the tags, which is optional, and we are the project owner. I can invite some new members, so I can click on the create project. Okay, so for creating a new DB, make sure you go to the cloud.mongodb.com, sign up with any of your email ID, and after that you need to create an organization, and inside the organization you need to create a new project. So this is what I'm doing over here. I've already created multiple videos on setting up MongoDB, and which I'm doing again in this video for you guys. So here we have this project created within that organization, and inside it we need to create a new cluster by clicking on create, and I'm gonna go with the free. Let's leave it like this, cluster 0, and I'm gonna be choosing my nearest region, which is going to be this one. You can choose any nearest region you by selecting it from here, and we don't need to do anything else. Let's click on the create deployment. So it is going to take some time, and it's going to generate the cluster for us. So you can see that it has generated, and we have this username and the password. Make sure you save these passwords and the username for future to be used. And let's copy this one, and let's click on the create database user, which I have just created. Choose Mongoose method. Let's click on the drivers, and we have already installed MongoDB. We don't need to install it again. And we have this URL. Let's copy this URL. Let's click on the env, and let's replace this whole URL with this one. One thing which we need to modify in this URL is the DB name, which we need to add. So let's scroll to the right. Before this question mark, we can write the DB. So auth next v5, and this is the DB name I have written. You can write anything over here. We don't need to do anything else. All right, so now in our terminal I can actually let's click on the done, and let's click on the database. Currently it won't show anything. Let's click on the browse collections. So it is actually retrieving the list of data. So currently there is no data, that's why it is showing this. Now if I go to the Prisma, let's go down. So it is asking us to apply the schema and the generate the Prisma client. So these commands does not work with the MongoDB. These commands work with the MySQL database. So I'm going to show you the commands which are relevant to MongoDB, but if you are using Postgres database, you can still use these commands to actually apply or the generate. So I'm going to come over here in the terminal, and I'm going to run npx prisma generate first of all, and it has been generated without any error. Okay, you can see. And now I'm going to create npx prisma db push. Let's hit enter. So it is going to go through the URL of the database which we have actually added over here, and now it is not showing any error. So I'm hoping that it is going to generate all of the schema models which we have added over here, and it's going to be adding over here. I hope that it's going to generate, and we don't need to create a new user for that. And yes, you can see that it has added all the models in our MongoDB by just running that particular push command: account, authenticator, session, user, verification token. And this is the database name, auth next v5, and this is what we added over here in this particular URL. All right, so our configuration for the Prisma is working pretty fine, and now it's time to implement login with GitHub. So let's first configure that. I'm going to open up my GitHub profile. So here I need to go to the settings of my GitHub profile. In fact, if I go to the auth.js Prisma, let's go at the top, authentication, credentials, database. We have this web auth in OAuth, yes. And after clicking on OAuth, we can click on GitHub and how to set up sign in with GitHub. So this is how it is recommending us stuff. So after going to the settings, we need to click on the developer settings. Let's go down, developer settings, and here we need to click on OAuth apps. This is what it is suggesting, and we need to create a new OAuth app. Okay, so let's click on that. I've already created this one. Now I'm gonna create a new one for you guys. So let's add the auth v5 and the homepage URL. Let's go what it is providing. So we need to add the local host, this one. Let's copy it. Let's paste it. We don't need to add the description. This is optional. And authorization callback URL. Let's click on that. So this is what is provided by this documentation. You need to add this. And now for production, it will be with the HTTPS with the proper domain name, but for local, it can be this one. Okay. So after that, I'm going to click on the register application, and then it is going to provide me this client ID. Let's copy it. Let's paste it over GitHub ID, and then we need to generate a new secret. I'm not going to show you, but I'm going to copy the secret and add it in my env file. And you can see that we already added these auth GitHub ID and auth GitHub secret, which are coming from the .env file. Before I forget to put this env file in git ignore, let's actually open this up, and I'm going to add it over here so it doesn't get included in our git commands to push it in our repository. Okay, so let's close it. And now we need to create the UI to actually log in with the GitHub for now, and I'm going to do that next. So first of all, I'm going to set up the layout of the whole application. Currently, you can see that it is aligned on the top left corner, which is not looking good. I'm going to set up a proper margin on left and right and top, and move everything in the center of the page. Okay. So first of all, in the global, I'm going to remove everything which is added inside, but keep these 3 lines because without it, we cannot write Tailwind CSS. And here, I'm simply going to write background color, and this is going to be gray. So I'm going to be adding 1D, and then I'm going to simply change the color of all the texts to white. Okay. So this is how it's looking now, which is gray and the white text. Let's close this global.css, and inside the layout, I'm going to first of all set up the layout for all the children. And here I'm going to wrap everything within this div. And then let's add the class name. Let's add mx auto, max width screen large, height equals to screen flex, and the flex column. Okay, and inside this particular div, I'm going to add another div, and this is going to take all the children. Let's add a flex grow class. Let's remove the children from outside. And above this children div, I'm going to load a nav bar, which I have yet need to create. Okay, but for whole session of the user which is logged in to be accessible in the all the routes, so that we should be able to know that whether the user is logged in or not, and get the user information in all the files and folder of this app directory. We need to wrap this whole HTML within a session provider. Session provider is given by next-auth React. And then we need to provide it session. Session can be fetched from the auth.js file which we have created. So let me first wrap it around the HTML. And this session needs to come from auth. So session equals to await auth @/auth. Okay, and let's add async because we are using await. All right, let me verify if session provider is fetched from next-auth React and auth. Yes, that is fine. Now I'm going to create this nav bar. First of all, let's add this page .tsx, and I'm simply going to add a text. This is going to be a default text over here. All right, there must be some error about the navbar, so I'm going to add a new folder, components, and inside the components I'm going to add a new file. This is going to be the navbar.tsx rafce, and this is going to show the navbar above the children. There should not be any error now. Let's refresh. Actually, we need to import that which we have created. Fix, and this is the navbar. All right, so let's save it. And now you can see that these are all the children, and this is the navbar. This is containing only text for now, and which we are going to modify now. So inside this navbar, I'm going to create first of all the logo, and for now we can simply add a text for the logo. So let's start off with a nav tag, and inside the nav let's start off with the div, and inside this div let's write link from next link. This is going to take the class name, and I'm going to add the flex, not for the link, but link is going to be simply font bold, and href is going to be the slash, so this is going to take us to the home route. All right, and inside the nav I'm going to add class, and I'm going to add the border bottom, background bg background. We can have width full, flex, items center, and inside this div I'm going to add class name. This is going to be the flex, width full, items center, justify between, and margin to the y-axis equals to the 4. Let's see. Yes, you can see that we have this home and we have this border at the bottom. We can change the color of it if you want. And below this link I'm going to add another div, and inside this div I can add these links, two links actually. One is the middleware route, this which I yet need to create, and rather than href I can have the name of this route is middleware. The reason I've given it the middleware name because I will be protecting this middleware route from the middleware file. And the next is going to be this server. The reason I've given it the name server because I will be protecting it directly within the server component but not from the middleware file. So I'm going to be showing you different ways of protecting routes and giving it the same name over here. Okay, so server, and we don't need these classes over here. Let's remove that. And for this div I'm simply going to add flex item center, and within this I'm going to giving it gap x5. Okay, and yes, you can see that it has this middleware and the server routes which are not existing yet. I will be creating it once I test the login with GitHub functionality. So after this div I'm simply going to be adding this div, another div for the login logout buttons. So I'm going to be adding flex items center and a gap x5. Okay, and inside this I'm simply going to be navigating us to the sign in route. Sign in route will be automatically triggered over here, which we have yet to create. So inside this div I'm going to add, let me copy this link, and rather than href I'm going to add the sign in, and inside this link I'm going to add a div. Inside this div let's add this login, and now you can see that there is a space in between all of these div sections. I have yet to add some styles to it, so let's add bg blue 600, text white, text sm, px4, py2, rounded sm. All right, so you can see that it is looking pretty good. And if I click on it, I should be navigating to the sign in route, which I'm going to create now. So I don't need to do anything over here now. So for now, I'm going to simply close that. And here inside this app directory, I'm going to create a new folder, and this is going to be the sign in folder. Let's create a new file, and this is going to be the page.tsx page. And this file is going to take up the form for the login and also a button for login with GitHub. So for this particular div, I'm simply going to add a class width equals to full, flex, empty20, justify, center. All right, so now inside this div, we can have a section, class name. This is going to be the flex column, and width 400 pixels. All right, so within this section, I'm going to add an h1 for the sign in, the title at the top. And after that, I'm gonna be loading login form. So let me add to do login form. Let me comment this line, which I will be doing. And next thing is login GitHub, which I yet need to create. So for this h1, I'm simply going to add a class, and this is going to be the text 3xl, width full, text center, font bold, margin bottom equals to 6. All right, so let me copy the name of this component over here, and login with GitHub. Let me quickly add this component. So let's copy it over here. So login github.tsx. All right, so inside this, I'm simply going to create a button. So RAFCE login GitHub, and inside this div, I'm going to add FA GitHub, and this is going to be coming from the React icons. So GitHub like this. Let's give it a class name, text white. I want icon to be of white color, and then let's add a p tag, login with GitHub over here. So inside this div, I'm going to add this class name. So to save over time, I'm simply going to add different classes, because the purpose of this video is not to teach you the Tailwind CSS, but these are few classes which I have added. So here, let me click on the login. There is an error. Obviously, we need to import that over here. This one, login with GitHub. Let's save it. And now you can see that we have this title sign in, and then we have this component loading up, which has this button over here. And for clicking on this button, I'm simply going to create an action. Action in Next.js are called the server actions, which we can use to perform any DB operations. So in short words, you can call server actions as the APIs. Okay, so I can create any folder anywhere, but to structure it properly, I'm going to create an actions folder outside at the root directory of this project, and inside this I can name the file auth.ts. So this particular file is going to be containing all the server action functions related to authentications only. That's why I've given it a name auth.ts. So let me create a new function, login async provider string, like this. And now I'm going to write the sign in. Sign in is going to be coming from next-auth React, which is the built-in function provided by Auth.js to log in with any provider. So I'm going to pass the provider. So once the login is successful with the GitHub or any other provider, I'm making this function as dynamic from the client side, from the components, whether rendered from server side or the client side. I'm going to pass the GitHub, Google, Facebook, or any other provider which is going to be used to log in a user with. Okay, and once the successful login is done, I'm going to redirect it to home route. Okay, once the login is successful, I want to revalidate path from next cache, the home route. Sometimes when the login happens, then we have to revalidate path so that everything is synced properly. Okay, so we have this sign in, we have this revalidate path. I'll come back to this because I will be adding login with credentials, logout. Let me add the logout thing as well. So I'm going to add export const logout, await sign out, revalidate path. Yes, but sign out needs to be fetched from the this one. This one, actually sign in, I have fetched it from here. Sign in can be used from this at auth as well. Okay, if I show you this auth, I am actually exporting sign in, sign out, and auth. This is something which we can use anywhere in our server actions. All right, so this is the function which we need to call to log out. This is the function which we need to log in with any provider, any social provider actually. Okay, so once the sign out is complete, I can also pass the redirect to this route as well. All right, so let's go over here in our login GitHub, and here I can actually add an on click event. So on click, and here I can write the login from the actions, and let's pass it to GitHub. All right, so let's go over here, let's refresh. There seems some kind of error. So we have this on click, so we need to make it use client because it require user interaction. Okay, and for the server actions we don't need to write anything. Actually this is the server action, so anything which is happening on the server that is accessing the DB, we can write use server at the top. All right, so let's go over here. You can see there is no error. If I click on the login now, let's see what happens. All right, so we are successfully navigating to the GitHub page for authorization. Before actually making it authorized, let me go over here in the nav bar so that I should be able to log out as well. Otherwise, I will not be able to log out. Let's okay, there seems an error. Let's save it. All right, so in the nav bar, I'm going to show the logout button as well. So inside this particular div, first of all, I'm going to make a check that if user is logged in or not. So to make a check, I can actually fetch from the auth. This auth is going to be coming from at auth. This is going to be async. All right, and this session is going to give us a clue whether user is logged in or not. So inside this particular div, I can write if session dot user does not exist, it means that user is not logged in. Okay, so I can put this login button inside this. All right, so once if user is logged in, then I'm going to show the email of the user, maybe the image of the user, and the logout button as well. So I'm going to create a new component for the logout which is not yet created. So let's do that quickly. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to write logout.tsx, and inside it I'm simply going to add a component directly. I don't want to waste time on that. So this is you can see this is the use client because it require on click. We have this logout action which we have already added in auth.ts logout, and then we have this on click calling this logout, and we have this simple tailwind css with this logout link. Okay, so let me save it. Let's close it. Let's go onto the nav bar. Let's bring it in, and there is this thing. So all right, so now I'm going to also show some kind of uh, div for actually showing the user email and the image. Let's first add flex items center gap x2 text sm. Okay, and inside this div I can add the session.user.name, and also I can actually write the session.user.image. Okay, if image exists, we need to get, actually it provides a URL, so we need to show the image in as a URL. So I'm simply going to add an image over here. Image needs to be fetched from let me import that manually from next image. So import image from next image. All right, so let's go over here. Let's go back. Let's refresh this page, and we are already on the login page, and let's click on the login with GitHub. And now let's authorize. We need to authorize it first time because we are logging in with the GitHub. And the GitHub email ID, you must have got a notification on your email address that the third party OAuth app is trying to access your account. So currently invalid source prop. Actually we need to add a host. I hope that you're already aware of, if you have been learning Next.js, then in our next config we have to add the images and then the domain. So images and then the domains, GitHub user content. Let's see. Let's refresh. We have, yes. All right, so you can see that I'm able to see my name and my avatar from the GitHub, and also the logout button because I am logged in. All right, and now if I click on the logout, you will see that I'm able to log out perfectly fine, and because of the session of the user I can see this login button, and I can see that name, avatar and the logout button after logging in with the GitHub. Let's try it again. I have clicked on this login with GitHub, and it should automatically log in rather than letting me authorize it again. So yes, so it didn't ask me to authorize it again, and I can see this login and then the logout. All right, so let's click on that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually protect these routes quickly. Once the protection is done, I'm also going to show you how we can access the session user details in our APIs as well in Next.js. And after that, I'm going to come back to this login form for login with credential and the user registration as well. By the way, if you open up the MongoDB database and click on this refresh button, you will see that the entry for this user is going to be added in our database against the relevant models, since we already tried login with GitHub from our application. And if I click on the authenticator, the relevant model will have the details. I can click on the user. User should have the details. Yes, we have these details, and we have the account details. Account is for the OAuth login providers. So these two models have these details. I think if I'm going to log in with credentials, this session is going to be having the data as well. These models are for the global perspective. As I've told you earlier that we might need to add forget reset password, 2FA, and all of these things. That's why the documentation have provided the model schema for all of these purposes. Okay, so let's come back over here, and this is the app running. If I click on the middleware, this route does not exist, so it's going to show me this default 404 error. Okay, so I'm going to create this particular route. I'm going to right click app, click on the folder, and here first of all let's add the middleware. Inside it I'm going to add page.tsx. So let's write RAFCE middleware, and inside it, in order to fetch the details of the logged in user, I can write session equals to the await auth. Auth is going to be coming from @auth. Let's add async, and we have this session. Okay, so I'm simply going to add some UI over here, the tailwind CSS. So let's add it over here. So we have this main div, middleware page, and the session.user.email. The logged in user email is going to be shown over here. This is not going to be, you can see it is showing the title but not the email because I'm not logged in. I will be protecting this route from the middleware file rather than directly in this particular component. So before that, let's quickly create another folder, server, and this is the route which I'll be protecting directly from within this file. Okay, so page.tsx. I'm simply going to copy paste everything from the middleware, and I'm going to change the name of this component to server. Okay, and using this session I can actually redirect. Since this is from the server side, I can use if session dot question mark dot user does not exist, then I can simply redirect it to the home route. Redirect can be from the next navigation. So next navigation. All right, so now if I click on the server, you will see that I'm not able to navigate to the server because it is protected. Now let's try to log in with GitHub again, and now I will be able to navigate to the server and I should see the details. Let's click on the server, and now you can see that the email is visible. Middleware have this email visible. Let me change the title for the server page. Yes. All right. So middleware server. Let's refresh actually. Yes, you can see that this is the server page showing the email, and I can actually access this particular route. It is no more protected. Now let's quickly protect our middleware route from the middleware file. So middleware.ts file. So in this particular file, this line I copied from the documentation. I'm just going to comment that. I don't need that for now. So import, let's add auth from @auth like this. Okay, and now I need to export default async function middleware request colon next request from next server, and I will also be needing next response from here. All right, so I'm going to define an array that which routes I want to protect. Actually, I can directly write it inside this middleware as well, like this. So return next response next to avoid any kind of error. So above that, I'm simply going to add protected routes. So this is where I'm going to define all the routes. For now, I'm simply going to protect the middleware route. Okay, Now let's use this array to actually protect this inside this middleware. So let's add this session equals to await auth, and now is protected equals to protected routes sum route, and request next URL path name starts with route. This is looking good. Now we have this not session is protected. I'm going to modify this. So const absolute URL equals to new URL. This one request next URL dot origin, and after that redirect to the absolute URL dot toString. All right. One last thing I need to export from here is the config matcher. Okay. And if I go to the protecting part of auth.js, I need to copy this particular matcher from here. Now let's save this file, and I'm gonna go and let's refresh it, and it's not actually loading. Let's go over here. So one thing that I would like to do is I'm simply going to remove next request from here. Let's copy it, let's paste it, and next request import type next request. And also this condition was selected by the extension which I'm using. I didn't see it carefully. So I can actually change it to and need to remove this not operator from is protected. So let's save it now and let's go. Let's refresh. There is no error. I can actually navigate to the middleware and the server routes because I'm logged in. Let's click on the logout now and click on the middleware. I cannot actually navigate to the middleware because of this particular condition which I have added, and I cannot navigate to the server because the server route is being protected directly within this particular component over here. Okay, so you can ignore it for now. Next time it will not be shown up. All right, so now next thing I want to show in Next.js, we can have APIs as well. So let's create a smallest API within this API route. So inside this API, I can actually have another folder. Let's give it the data. Let's add a new file, and this is going to be the route.ts. So inside this, I can actually import next response from next server, and let's export const get equals to, and to actually protect our API routes, I need to wrap the whole function of that API within the auth from that auth function which is being returned from auth file which we have created, and inside it I can have it like get request and this. So if now I can actually detect if user is logged in or not. So I can have a request dot auth, and then I can actually return next response dot json request dot auth. Okay, if user is not logged in, then I'm going to simply return the next response dot json, and rather than sending the user, I can simply return a message that not authenticated. Okay, and along with that I can also pass the status 401. So let's save it. Let's go over here, and in order to navigate to that API, I can actually call like API slash data. Now you can see that it is showing the message not authenticated. Let's go back because I'm not logged in. Let's try to click on the login with GitHub and try to log in. And once I'm logged in, I'm also going to navigate to that /API/data route. And now you can see that it is giving me a proper detail of the user. This is what I am returning it from here, and it is giving us the correct result. So using next-auth session object, wrapping everything within the auth, I can actually fetch the data of that user or anything I want to do based upon if user is logged in or not. So one thing left for this particular part of the tutorial is login with credentials, which I'm going to be adding right below this title, and login with credentials and also user registration during the login process. So let's do that. So here in the sign in page, I added this to do. I need to create a form over here. Rather than directly creating form inside it, I'm going to create a new component. So right below this sign in title. Okay. So let's remove this comment, and I'm going to add login form as a component. So let's create that. So inside this components folder, I'm going to create a new file, and this is going to be the login form.tsx. So let's add RAFCE. Let's save this file, and also let's import it from here. All right. So now I'm going to go to the login form, and here I'm going to start off creating that form. So first of all, let's add a div, and inside this div I'm going to create a form. Inside this form I'm going to create another div. Okay, so first of all, this form is going to take an action, which I'm not going to add anything for now. After that, let's add some classes. So width full, flex colon, gap equals to 4. For now, let's remove the actions because of the error. And this is going to be the div does not need any styling. So inside this div we can have a label. So label is going to be email. Below this label we can have an input, type email, placeholder email, and I also want to add ID of email, and I want to add some classes. Okay, so rather than actually wasting our time, let me quickly add some styling to it. So these are some classes added, and for the label I'm also going to add a few classes, directly copying it. Okay, blog text sm. Let me see, you can see that it's looking pretty good, email and then this email. And now we don't need to add any class to it as well. So now let's copy this div, paste it below, and add it password. Type is going to be the password. Email placeholder is also going to be the password. ID password, and the class names are going to be the same. Okay, so and also one important thing is this name. Name is very important because without name we will not be able to pass the values inside this input to our server action, which I yet need to create inside it. This is going to be a function to log in with credentials. Okay, so for email as well I'm going to add name. Okay, so now below this form, let's go over here, it's looking good. And below this particular div I'm going to add another div, and this is going to take auth buttons. The reason for the button, I'm creating a separate component because I want to use form status hook to actually show the loader during the process of the login, because it has to be the child component for having that use form status in a proper working condition. Okay, so now MT4, let's quickly add that auth button dot tsx. Okay, so let's add RAFCE, and inside it I'm simply going to import pending state equals to use form status from React DOM, and inside this return I'm simply going to add a button. So for this, let's disable that if it is pending. During the process of the login, I want to disable it, and I want to give it the type equals to submit. And after that, I'm also want to so for the content, I'm going to add, if it is pending, then I need to show loading, otherwise it is going to be the sign in. Okay, and for the classes, class name, I will be adding the class name directly over here without wasting time. So let's add that. So now you can see that if it is pending, then the background color is going to be gray. Otherwise, the button background color is going to be blue. And these are some default styling for the login button. And the text is also going to be changed. If it is pending, it's going to be loading. Otherwise, it is going to be the sign in. All right. So let's close that and let's bring that in. So auth button. All right, so let's save it. There seems some kind of error. You are importing a component that needs use form status. It only works in the client component. Actually, this is the login form, and I need to actually change it to use client. Okay. So now you can see that it's looking pretty good. We have this blue button, and if I click on this button, it will not do anything practically on the back end. So let's do that now. So inside this form, I would like to add a function over here inside this particular file. So this is going to be a server action. So export const login with creds equals to the async, and I'm also going to pass the form data, which is going to be of type form data const like this. Okay, so let's parse that out. So I can actually parse this data out. So raw form data equals to, I'm building it as an object. Okay, so this is going to be an email, form data, get email as a string, get password as a string, and now I will also be passing an admin. I'm not passing it from the component. This is just a random thing. I can actually pass some parameter from here and then add it over here, but this is just for you guys to understand. We can actually set up the role as well. At the start of the video, I modified the schema, which I copied from the documentation to add the admin and the user roles. And then I'm going to add the redirect rules. Redirect to this one. So once we compile this data over here, actually we don't need this as a string over here. After that, we can pass it to the credentials provider in the auth.js and process the login. But before that, I've actually added this particular function. This is actually for debugging purpose, whether the login is successful or not. And this is also going to detect that if the user with this email exists in the DB or not. So here in this function, I'm passing an email ID. Let me do that. So this one as string. Okay, because this is of type string. This DB is this DB which I have created using the Prisma. This is where I'm exporting it. And now this user is the model name, the schema model name. Find unique is the built-in function of the each model that we create in Prisma. Where email ID, this is going to check if the email ID which is being passed over here is actually exist in the DB or not. If yes, it is going to return a user, otherwise it is going to return null. Okay, so for now I'm going to simply log that existing user. Okay, next what we can do is we can process the login functionality. So I'm going to add the try block, and inside it I can use the same sign in function which I used for the GitHub login credentials, like over here, sign in. This is not required, by the way. I've just added it for debugging purpose. Okay, so this is the name of the credentials which I need to accept over here in the credentials provider, and the raw data is being passed which I have compiled over here. Okay, and let's move further. Now we don't need to receive it in the user, and inside the catch block I have this error of type any. Okay, and then inside this catch I can check if what is the status of the error using this auth error which is provided by the next-auth. Auth error gives us some error types like the credential sign in. We can return some default custom error message from here. Otherwise, in the default case, something went wrong will be returned. Finally, just like we did over here, revalidate path, we can add it over here. All right, so this is where we have done it. Now we need to call this login with credence over here inside this form once it is submitted. So action equals to login with creds. Okay, all right, so that is done. Now once this form is going to be submitted, this is going to be processing this form, and this is where it is going to receive. And whenever this line is going to get executed, we are going to receive this raw form data over here within this credentials provider, and this is where I'm going to write some further code to process the login, user registration, error handling, and more. So first of all, in this credentials I'm going to start off with the name, and name is going to be the credentials. Okay, so after that, let's add these credentials. First of all, we have this username. We don't need username. We have the email. Email is going to have the label. This is going to be of type email, and we can have the placeholder as well if we want, like this. Okay, and then the password is going to have this label, and the type is going to be the password. Okay, so after this credentials object, what we can do is we have this async authorize credentials function. Okay, so but I'm going to write authorize colon async credentials arrow function. Okay, so inside this, first of all, I'm going to check if not credentials or credentials.email. If any of these does not exist, then I'm simply going to return null. Next, I'm going to receive the email ID and then the password from that server action. So email equals to the credentials.email as string, and then I'm going to hash the password. Hashing the password actually is important for the security purpose. We don't want to store the user password directly in the database. We want to encrypt that password. Okay, so const hash, and let's create a new utils folder. Inside it, I'm going to add helper.ts file, and this file is going to take a function using the bcrypt.js package. I've just copied it from its documentation with slight modification. You can just pause the video and write it down yourself. So let's close it. And here in the auth.ts, I can write the salt hash, and then I can pass this particular password inside it to process the password hashing. Okay, so once that is done, we don't need to pass it as a string to it. Okay, so next I'm going to check if user of type any equals to await db dot user dot find unique where email. Okay, and the reason I'm checking it over here to actually address if user already exists in the database, then I don't want to register a new user in the database. And if it does not exist, then first I will be registering it in the database, then I'm going to process the login functionality. Okay, so login is already done over here. This is just to process the registration and the login stuff. So if user does not exist, then I'm going to add await db user create and then data. This is going to take an email, and we can actually add hashed password and then the hash. Okay, I'll come back to this. It's not a very big error. So if user exists, then I'm simply going to process the login by compare the syncing if the password which is stored in the database is actually matching with the password which is passed from the form which user is trying to log in with. Okay, so I can try is match equals to bcrypt dot compare sync credentials dot password as string with user dot hashed password. Okay, so now after this I can check if this does not match, then I can simply throw an error that incorrect password. Okay, but after this I'm simply going to return a user. Returning user means that we are successfully processing the login process. Okay, so let me go up and let me try to fix this error. As we know that this data contains the key value pairs which should be matching with the schema which we have created. So we are using the user schema. So let's open up the schema.prisma. This is the user schema which we are using. So we are actually passing the email which is correct. And we don't have the hashed password over here which we are passing over here, so we need to add that over here. So I'm going to add hashed password and then the string. So let's save it. It will not work quickly. What we need to do is we need to run those commands to regenerate that schema. So in the terminal I'm going to run that command again. So npx Prisma generate. Now you can see that the error is gone. Locally it is generated. Now we need to push it in the DB as well. So npx Prisma DB push. All right, so this new variable is going to be pushed. So whenever you want any kind of modification in your Prisma ORM or the schema models, you need to run these two commands when you are using MongoDB. If you are using MySQL database, then the documentation of the auth.js have these commands which you can run. Okay, so let's close that, and this error is gone now. There is no error in this file. So let me run the project now. So the project is running. Let's go. First of all, let's refresh this DB. And I want to verify the user. There is no data over here. It's still loading. So currently it's showing some kind of data. The reason is that we have used this particular email ID for login with GitHub. Okay. And we have this session authenticator and the verification token. Account will also be showing the same email ID which I used to log in with the GitHub. So I will be using a different email ID. So let's go over here. Let's refresh this page. So this is the form, and let me add a new password. So capital A B C D 1 2 3 4. So this is the password I have just added. Let's click on the sign in now. So it's showing loading because of the use form status. All right, so let's click on update password, and it is showing the logout button. It means that we have successfully logged in, but it's not showing that avatar or the email which I need to see. But let's go over here, let's refresh and see if the user with the new email ID exists over here in the user model or not. It should be added. Yes, you can see that this is the email ID along with the hashed password with the role. Here it has added over here. So over user registration is successfully being done, and here let's click on the middleware, and we are successfully logging in. And if I refresh this page, we cannot see that circle over here which I need to see. So let's go over here in the navbar and session.user.name and then the image. Do I have an image or an email? Actually, we don't have an name or email. While logging in, we did not pass the username. So while fetching the user data, you can see that here we had this image, but here we don't have the image. All right, image is optional in our schema. And also we have this name property, but here we don't have the name property. This is the reason the details are not being shown up. And we have seen the login with credentials successfully working along with the user registration. And also while we are logging with the credentials, the protection of routes is also working fine. The same configuration is working that was working before with the login with GitHub. If I click on the logout, I'm not able to navigate to any of these routes. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments of this video if you want me to further create more parts of Auth.js version 5 to add forget reset password feature. Although I've already created a video using the previous version, but if you want me to process from this step further to add the forget and reset password, and also I will be happy to assist you guys with the two-factor authentication as well in this particular. So it will require a couple of more parts. Let me know in the comments of this video, and do like my video as well. It will really encourage me to make those extra parts of this tutorial Auth.js version 5. So thank you so much for watching guys. Again, see you in the next video where I will be talking about more stuff in Next.js 14 or 15, or let me know in the comments below. See you in the next video.